On today's episode of Locked On Wilds, the opening night roster has been set. A familiar face is back, and those line combinations are whack.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
Hey, this is Marcus Foligno, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com, and you can win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we take a look at the opening night roster with some surprises, some head scratchers, and we look at what is hopefully just a set of practice lines. We'll talk about all that as well as setting the scene for the first couple games of the season this week because the opening night of the year for the Wild is Thursday. It's already here. Battle stations, everyone. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, host of Seth on Sports, and bringing you credentialed coverage of the Minnesota Wild throughout the season, joined by Alex Micheletti. And Alex, we had a grab bag of info this weekend. Filip Gustavsson signed for 5 years at a pretty nice number, if you ask me. It's $6.8 million. So let's just start right there. I want to get your reaction to that deal that Michael Russo said came up pretty quickly. Like it wasn't something the Wild were really working a ton on. They were kind of having the exploratory conversations on, and all of a sudden, boom, deal is done. 5 years, $6.8 million per for an AAV. 5 more years of Gus Bus. I gotta say, I like it. What say you?
Yeah, good value for the contract. I know people are kind of freaking out at maybe Kirill's amount for the amount of years and in terms of dollar amounts, but Gus is great value. It leads, a few other deals that were, pretty good value. And Boldy is outplaying his deal, and so is Eck. And so the hope is Gus does the same thing because we've seen a couple other goalies go way higher than that. Some are making $10 million, and so that's good, really good value for Gus as long as he stays healthy.
And Gus is not Stuart Skinner, so that's
right.
That's a good thing. We'll talk more about that in a little bit because Connor McDavid also signed a 2-year deal to stay with the Edmonton Oilers. He did not take a penny over what he was previously making at $12.5 million. Stan Bowman and the rest of the Edmonton Oilers front office exhaling profusely, saying, "Thank you."
And Jake Wallman is happy too because he gets almost $50 million as basically a third pair D.
Yeah.
So thanks, Connor.
Thanks for those extra dollars that we're going to put to good use. So if they don't win a Stanley Cup in those 2 years, he's 100% gone, right?
Yeah, I mean the rumors will always continue that Toronto just because he's from that area. So another interesting thing after he signed this, when I was thinking, him and Austin Matthews are free agents the same year. So could you imagine if they would somehow be able to pair up together? That would be just insane.
Oh my God. Chicago, right?
Right.
It's going to be Chicago because
right.
If Kirill Kaprizov isn't going to Chicago, somebody better.
Right.
It was interesting because I think, there's a lot of talk that, well, if Kirill wants to be part of a legitimate Stanley Cup winner, he needs to do what Connor McDavid did. And it's two different situations. Connor McDavid has had a team that was a cup caliber team because he has Leon Draisaitl on that roster, and they still haven't been able to break through. And so now this is him saying, this is your last chance. This would be what I imagine Kirill would do after this current deal is done. If he's still got a ton in the tank, which he's going to be 36, 37 by the time the deal is done. So he may not. But that would be where I imagine he would be at that point, because the Wild they haven't been cup contenders yet. They've been playoff caliber, but they haven't been true cup contenders. So until they get to that point, then you can kind of compare the two. But for right now, it's two totally different situations. And I think McDavid has put a pretty clear line in the sand for Edmonton that, like, fix his goalie situation, or I'm headed to New York or wherever.
100%. And, Kirill's had more injury issues than McDavid. And of course, McDavid's the best player in the world. So yeah, just completely different situations, like you said. And, he's been in the past couple of years now, he's been in that Stanley Cup final environment. And he wants to give it one last go, or a couple last goes of it. And, instead of the Bourne ultimatum, it's the McDavid ultimatum.
It might be the situation where Matt Boldy gets once his deal is done, depending on how things go for the Minnesota Wild. And how does Leon Draisaitl feel right now that he locked in full-time for a long-term extension? And if McDavid leaves, he's going to be the one left holding the check.
The funny thing about this whole situation the past couple of weeks, since, Theophanos did eventually get Kaprizov that deal, but then he's looking and he sees what McDavid just did, and him and the rest of the big-time agents have to be like, what are you doing, Connor? The agents of Eichel, and Theophanos has Panarin that's going to be a free agent. And so all these guys that are, wanting mega bag deals, and you see McDavid take this philanthropist discount is hilarious. Somebody was saying they basically made I think it was Wisniewski or whatever, was however you pronounce his name, from ESPN, was basically saying that McDavid is the assistant general manager of the Oilers now, because he gave him all this money that should be earmarked for him and can go elsewhere.
We'll get to the Minnesota Wild opening night roster here in the next segment, but I did want to ask you one final thing, because it just popped into my head. And it has been making the rounds because, obviously, as you noted, Artemi Panarin told the Rangers that he would like to wait as far as an extension goes, that he doesn't want to talk about that right now. And Bill Guerin made quite a few comments when Kirill was signed, stuff that we have been saying for years, like, you got to build a competitive roster around him. And the Wild are starting to do that. They've got good pieces around him, but they need more. And Bill Guerin said, well, we have pieces to be able to make that happen. And one player that has already been linked to the Wild is Artemi Panarin. And as much of a fan as I am of bread, as you can probably tell, I don't know how to feel about this, because Panarin is 33 right now. If he's playing well and the New York Rangers are out of it at the deadline, that's one thing. But if the Rangers are out of it at the deadline, it feels like he's going to be part of the reason why, which would be kind of a hesitancy for me to go out and try to get him for a year.
I'm with you 100%. The Rangers are a really strange team. You look at their roster and you're like, what is Drury trying to do here? And, they reacquire JT Miller and they name him captain, and he had all sorts of drama in Vancouver. Is that going to come over to New York now. There's a lot of just weird older teams in the East that are kind of like on the brink of complete, where they have to just completely start over. You look at Pittsburgh too. Malkin is always going to be rumored with the Wild too, just because we've seen the videos in the offseason of him training with Kirill Kaprizov. But, Malkin's at his stage in his career where, he has won cups, but I think he really wants to, he saw what Brad Marchand was able to do and get a cup there. So, yeah, they'll be, Malkin's going to be a name attached to so many teams just because he's right at the tail end and can provide that scoring secondary punch for you. With Panarin, he's had some off ice kind of issues that, would that play in this market? I don't know. It kind of got brushed aside a little bit. There was that athletic report, but nothing really came about it with the league. So that's that's gonna carry him wherever he goes as well. They're just allegations, but that's tough. And you're right. He's right at the edge of is going to fall off a cliff. He's the same age as Tarasenko, and Tarasenko really started to slow down. It could have been him just kind of pouting in Detroit. We'll see if that the Wild are kind of gambling on that. It was just we'll take your last year of your deal. They got him for free, basically.
We'll rescue you.
Yeah, you always laugh at when you see the FC on there, the future considerations. Bill Guerin will buy some Little Caesars pizza.
Manny's Steakhouse for Steve Yzerman when he's in town if the Wild play Detroit. That's what's on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see. That's one thing that is going to be different, I think, about this year than previous seasons, is that is going to be a talker from the beginning of the season. Is all eyes on the teams that fall out of the race to try to determine who the Wild go after at the trade deadline. Because they're unless they get just riddled with injuries again this year, they could have as much as $20 million available at the trade deadline. And that'll buy you anything. That'll buy you any player on any roster.
And we've seen with this team that other teams, when they match up against the Wild in the playoffs, if you can shut down 97 in Boldy, it's kind of like a ghost town of scoring for the Wild. So to be able to get another forward that you can rely on would be so huge. And because you look at Eck and he has to even step up more defensively in the playoffs, shut down the number one center. So you're not really relying on him to score as you might have in the regular season. But as we know, in the postseason, the playoffs, it tightens up even more. And so you're not, the hope is, you take a look at Winnipeg and they have Gus Nyquist in their top six. So, you're not hoping that you have to go get somebody of that ilk for trade deadline. Justin Brazeau's in the top six. So some teams are really, really in Pittsburgh. Some teams are really, really, really fighting it right now.
Wow. That is diabolical for the Penguins. So we'll keep an eye on that, of course, because we're going to keep an eye on everything this year. But I do want to get into some of the roster discussion. But we should discuss a familiar face that is now back on the roster after being acquired for nothing, after being sent out with a bunch of picks for a guy just above him on the depth chart. So we will talk about the return of Damon Hunt as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We've got our usual cast of characters that are starting to return to the fold here for this upcoming season. We'll be talking with Kevin Gorg tomorrow of FanDuel Sports Network. He'll be a reoccurring guest on the show. Zach Zeman's going to make his return this week. Jay Homuth is going to make his return this week. And we got a couple of other surprises lined up for you as well. So stay tuned and make sure to subscribe on YouTube. The YouTube number is going crazy as we are all the way up now to 3,626 subscribers. So let's get to 4,000 by the end of the season. Let's get to 4,000 by the end of the year. Who knows? We can do it. So just hit that sub button so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Alex, let's talk about an old friend who has returned. Damon Hunt, who was cut by the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was waived by the Jackets because they had 7 one-way contracts in front of him. He had a good camp, but old Dino loves those vets. And Hunt made his way back. The Wild claimed him, and he now is the 7th defenseman on the roster, which meant that Jack Johnson was shown the door. He's a good camp body. I didn't mind the thought of having him around some of those younger defensemen, considering he's been in the league for 18 years.
He can go back on tour.
Yeah. It's about time he put out another album to contend with T-Swift. So yes. Yeah, he's got other things going on. But you look at the names for this Columbus team. You had Zach Werenski, Ivan Provorov, Damon Severson, Dante Fabro, Eric Goodbranson, Jake Christensen, and Denton Matejchuk are the defensemen listed for the Blue Jackets. I mean, it just kind of shows you where Damon Hunt is at, but good to have him back, and it'll be interesting to see what happens once Jonas Brodin returns.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of just did it as a favor for himself.
Yeah.
You feel bad. He seems like just a great kid too. And he knows those bus trips in Iowa though. So he might be destined for that. At some point you really feel for him. You'd think at some point he would just go overseas and play in Sweden or Finland or Switzerland, where he would get a legitimate chance. But you don't want to give up on that dream in the NHL, because once you're gone, once you're officially out of the ecosystem of the AHL and NHL, the chances of you coming back to get a chance in the NHL are really, really slim. So he's probably kind of on his last leg of attempting to play in the NHL.
Another surprise as far as the opening night roster goes was that Hunter Haight did not make the roster, but he had a good camp. He definitely was noticeable, but I'm just going to say this as far as the young players go, especially this year. I don't have any problem with any of the players in the Wild system that are deemed prospects getting a chance to work with a coach that's done it before considering what has happened the last 2 seasons to this Iowa Wild team.
Yeah, all those guys better be on notice because we know Greg Cronin does not take anything from anybody. He's another, it's part of the Boston Mafia of coaches and personnel that Bill Guerin has constructed with this organization, and he has a history of getting guys to the NHL. So the hope is, that he can get this Iowa team from the bottom up into making the playoffs again, because it's been a couple of years where they haven't even been close to making the playoffs. And as we've seen with some of the prospects that have come up here and are currently penciled in for the roster, that doesn't mean that they're going to be on the roster all season.
Yeah.
Ogren's got to produce. If not, if Hunter Haight is performing really well down there, they could definitely swap. I could see it, and especially since he was so close to making it here.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is I think Hunter Haight would have made the roster had Nico Sturm been more injured. But the fact that Nico Sturm is able to be with the team to start the year, where are you going to play him? And this is the age-old debate. Would you rather have a guy like Hunter Haight be a fourth liner or your 13th forward, or be playing top line minutes down in Iowa? That's what Vinny Hinostroza is for. He can be that 13th forward and sit on the bench for 5 or 6 games and then get in for somebody who needs a breather. That's what his role is as a veteran. I want Hunter Haight to play. And if there's not a spot for him to do it in Minnesota, he should go do it in Iowa.
And these prospects, they have to know, especially with the Wild organization, look at how many of the veterans have no trade clause in their contract. So they're set in stone. They aren't going to Iowa. And so they just have to continue to buy their time, or hope their contract runs out, and then don't re-sign here, because you know what this organization does, and where I would hope that they would look at the depth chart above them and see there isn't a whole lot of open spots for a couple of years here, just because guys are solidly locked in, and Bill Guerin rewarded that core by doing that. And you look at Carson Lambos, and you feel sorry for the kid, but that's look at he can look at Damon Hunt and be like, Damon's been through it with 2 organizations now.
Yeah. There'll be a few names that'll come off the roster after this season. There will be a few more after that, a few more after that. And these guys, Riley Height, 20, Hunter Haight, 21. It's not like you got a guy that is 25 years old in the minor leagues and you're like, geez, we can't find a spot for this guy. If that's the case, trade him.
Yeah, we drafted him when he was 18. He's basically the mayor of Des Moines.
Yeah, that's not the case here, but I get it, because as we're going to talk about here in the final segment, some of these line combinations make me want to pull my hair out, and then I'm like, I don't have any left. I get it. So we'll take a look at the line combinations and look ahead to the first couple games of the season. We're so back. You
had the perfect tweet today of just a line combination discourse. We are so back.
We have made it out of the wilderness. We'll take a look at the first couple games of the season and the lines when we continue today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The Minnesota Vikings, fresh off of a gutsy win against the Cleveland Browns, maybe got their season back on track, but unfortunately they are on a bye this week. So unless you are betting on their ability to win the NFC North or the Super Bowl, those futures bets are about the only thing that you have going for you this week. Minnesota Wild, though, are in action Thursday against the St. Louis Blues. I would imagine they're favored, and they should be because it's the Blues. But that is your best bet here for this week, pun fully intended. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. All right, courtesy of friend of the show, Jesse Pierce, the line combinations from practice today. Kaprizov-Rossi-Boldy, Foligno, Eriksson, Tarasenko, Trenyan, Hartman, Johansson, Yurov, Sturm, Ogren, Hinostroza. The defensemen, Middleton, Faber, Boyum, Spurgeon, Bogosian, Juracek, Damon Hunt as your seventh, and then Jonas Brodin still in the yellow. Now, Russo said non-contact initially, but then he said it's not as though he can't be hit. They're just like, just ease up a little bit. So he continues to skate, continues to work his way back towards a speedy recovery. But here's what I'm hoping. Because, you know, preseason is about working on combinations, trying to see, you know, if such and such player is out, can these guys work together? You're plugging and playing as much as you possibly can. Foligno, Eriksson, and Tarasenko was not a combination that was used in the preseason. Trenyan, Hartman, Johansson was not a combination that was used in the preseason. Yurov, Sturm, and Ogren, I don't believe was a combination that was used in the preseason. I would be shocked if these are the combinations that the Wild are going with to start the season, having not had any look at them throughout the year. John Hines got extensive looks at both Danil Yurov and Liam Ogren with Eriksson, and Tarasenko to try to see who fit better with who. Danil Yurov actually had the better of the chemistry with those two than Liam Ogren did. So I'm not going to go too crazy about these combinations until Thursday hits and John Hines is like, these are your starters. Ogren is the 13th forward and Vinny Hinostroza is starting. At that point, I will publicly lose my mind and I will have to be consoled in a dark room somewhere in my apartment.
And it's the Blues. You know, there's going to be chaos that first game. It's Binnington. He hates the Wild. The Wild have, you know, history with him. And the Blues are high flying. I don't know if you want Foligno matched up against Jimmy Snuggerud. You know, it's like, what is he doing in the, you know, it's like the polar bear meme in Texas. It's like, what is he doing here? So that was eye opening. It just, yeah, that's a weird fit with Ek and Tarasenko. I don't know how that line, and then the third line too. Hartman's got to be like, what is going on here? They don't seem to fit. So, I mean, if that's how it's going to be, I think Jim Montgomery is going to eat up that lineup, just saying, oh, look at the mismatches. So, yeah, like you said, if this is what it is for Thursday, then it's like sound the alarm.
Yeah, I just like, you know what you're going to get from the Kaprizov-Rossi-Boldy line. Scored something like 6 goals in 2 preseason games this year.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're ready.
You did that pencil that, especially Rossi. I'm sure he's amped up to play with 97 and Boldy. Get some cookies. But
call me crazy here. Would it not, if you were going to go with some sort of a grinded out type line, you would almost want to go Trenyan, Ek, Foligno, right? If
Oh,
you were going to go with
100%.
like a
Yeah. Just
defensive
grind.
grind it out.
Yeah.
And then I would go like, I don't know. I know they want Hartman to be a center. That's clearly where the Wild want him to be this year. Swap Foligno and Hartman. If
it makes sense.
If you don't think Urov or Ogren are ready for a second line spot right away, and I understand the hesitancy with that. Like, I get it. But if you we spent episodes talking about this offseason. Like, those top two lines, you got to go toe-to-toe with the other top lines that the Central Division has to offer.
Stacked.
And guess what? All of them score goals.
Yeah, lots of goals. And the centers are dominant. I mean, you look at, the Kings, just they're loaded through the middle. I mean, all these teams in the central, Dallas is so loaded. It's crazy. Colorado is just, it's a nightmare going into Denver there. Go up through the middle. So yeah, they're gonna have their hands full for sure in the West.
Johansson will lead the team in clean zone entries per 60. And that will be it.
He finagles his way. It doesn't matter what he's making. He somehow has a stranglehold on getting into a scoring line somehow.
What I will say too is just don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Danila Urov hops higher up in the lineup. Everything that I have read, everything that I've seen, he is pretty well ahead of the game as far as defense goes, and he's a quick study too. He learns very quickly, and it looks as though he's getting comfortable out there, which is nice.
And that's what coaches look for too. If you can be that 200-foot player, you're going to get the ice time for sure.
So I would say if there is a weird looking second line combination, don't expect it to be like that for long. I think it's just a matter of let's just see what Urov does for a couple of games. And if he's ready to rock, I would be, if this is what they go with on Thursday, I would not be shocked if that changes within a week.
Yes. Yeah, maybe mid-game. Yeah, depending on how it's going with St. Louis.
The Blues are up first. The first game of the season will be Wild Blues. That's Thursday night. We will not be. I'm going to tell you right now. We are scheduling out the postcasts that we do this year. There will be some nights that we don't do them. There will be some nights we'll try to do as many as we can, but there just are going to be some nights that we're not able to bring them to you. And by scheduling them out, I hope to avoid a lot of the confusion. Thursday is one of the games that we will not be able to postcast. I have a football game that night on the road, so that is just not going to work. Saturday, I'm planning to be at the game. Monday, I am planning to cover. Yet to be determined if I go. We'll see. But Thursday, we will not have one. Saturday, Monday, yes. Tuesday, probably. I'll have that. I just have to see what the playoff schedule looks like for high school football. But I would imagine we'll do one there. And then Friday, TBD. But we will have them scheduled out in advance, and we'll let you know when we are and aren't, so that we just, we keep a consistent schedule this year for those. So St. Louis on Thursday, Columbus on Saturday, and should be two wins. Should be two wins for this team to start off the season.
Yeah, and in theory, in those both teams, they always have really entertaining games against both of these franchises. The history obviously with St. Louis being in the division and also playoffs series dealing. We'll never forget the Jake Allen series, but in Bennington just causing all sorts of chaos, and Columbus got Dean there now, and they're a young team trying to sneak their way into the playoffs this season. Yeah, we'll see. But I'm looking forward to regular season hockey back. You look at what happened in the Battle of Florida the other night, where everybody was getting kicked out. I mean, these players are ready for regular season, and thank goodness with the new CBA that they're reducing the preseason, because it's just, these guys, they can be ready after 1 or 2. They don't need 8, 9 preseason games.
No, you don't need, and you don't have, teams do not play the same number of preseason games, which is mind-boggling. So get it to 2 or 3 and be done with it. You don't need any more than that. We don't need to make it a 3-week preseason.
No.
Like, get it set. We're going to have late September hockey next year. All aboard. And the season is here. That'll do it for today's episode of Lockdown Wild. Again, Kevin Gorg joins us tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that episode coming out. To further take a look, we dive into the Central Division extensively, and we'll get Kevin's thoughts on the extensions. And as I called it, a lot of negotiating all offseason. We'll talk about all that with KG tomorrow, and plenty of other surprises as we move through the rest of the week. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got them for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.